Welcome to this special edition of Keeping It Real, panel discussions with entrepreneurs who have shared their stories in our guest blog and join us to discuss topics trending in business. Our guests are innovators, collaborators, and small business owners who have successfully made the transition from corporate leader to business owner. Our topic is small business and community impact. Today is part 1 of 2 in the series. We will discuss the importance of connections in our communities. Are these relationships symbiotic? And do thriving businesses equal thriving communities? To help us explore the topic, I'd like to introduce you to our expert panel. Susan Crossman is a writer, editor, and speaker from Oakville, Ontario. Hilda is an author, a speaker, and work culture expert from Toronto, Ontario. Alexis Gladstone is a speaker, trainer, and executive coach from Chicago, Illinois. And Darren Sanger-Smith is an architectural designer from Burlington, Ontario. Welcome.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Hey. You know, I appreciate that you're all able to join me today because we've all been in business for a number of years and contribute to our communities through job creation, volunteerism, sponsorships, donations, and mentorship. Connections are made independently or as part of a group within service clubs and membership organizations. And I'm sure you'll agree there was a time when discussing our communities meant the cities where we live and work. Now it may also include global networks. As we begin to discuss community impact, I have to ask, do you consider your community within your geographic area, global, or both? Hilda? What do you think? Where do you think your communities are?
It's certainly pre-COVID. It was local and national. So whenever I could get away nationally, I would do that. But with COVID, that just really opened the door to international. And I love it when people invite me to speak in Malta video, as well as I say, yeah, come join me, and we figure out the time zone. So I think of myself in terms of local, national, and global.
That's a really good point about the before and after COVID snapshot, right? Susan, what about you?
I really echo what Hilda just said. Prior to COVID, I did quite a lot of networking locally, and that's been years now since I've done that. I really am primarily an international service provider. Most of my clients are in the United States, and so I have a lot of connections, and my network is primarily there. And what a good excuse to go somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
Alexis,
what about you?
Come on down, Susan. It's great weather here.
Yeah, I love Chicago.
Exactly. So obviously, I'm the non-Canadian on this call, so I can absolutely say it's global. But even before the pandemic, I was lucky enough for some of my clients to be able to travel internationally and start building connections in community. Like I have a large community in Australia that I'm connected with because of business that I had done over there. Mm-hmm. So I just think, as both Susan and Hilda said, COVID just changed the game on a different level and a different scale. So I would say my community right now is actually, it's probably 50-50 in terms of whether it's local or around the globe.
Right. And Darren, I know that your business ties you more to a geographic community, but do you have a global network as well?
From an inspirational standpoint, yes. I mean, I look all over the world for inspiration on how we can better ourselves, but my community is probably quite local now. COVID actually quite the reverse to all of you. COVID put me in a point where I started to shrink the business and boutique it a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And as such, to offer more time to my clients. So I brought it down to a more micro level where, instead of reaching my hands out to all over the place and being more than what I could actually offer, I decided to become a little bit more local and be more involved in the actual community.
I love your reference to leadership development because, I think we all look outside our back doors in order to try to find and expand our networks to learn something new. So in the last few years, how have you strengthened those connections in your community? So, Susan, you mentioned that most of your clients are in the United States. Did you find that they found you, or did you have to go looking for them in order to strengthen those relationships?
Gee, it seems to be happening both ways. I've done a lot of networking online over the last few years with international organizations. And I think too, I run a summit. I run a 4-day summit online, and that has exposed me to a lot more people because I'm looking for speakers for my event all the time. And so that's really given me entree into a lot more communities, and I've done a lot more networking. And it's so much fun.
Yeah, it is. It is really fun to meet people from, we think we're so different and yet we're the same, right?
Yep.
Now, Hilda, I know that you speak internationally and you're going to a few conferences this year, which was part of your strategic plan. Have you reached out to those folks individually, or are they looking at your website or your social media posts and making connections?
Some I've actually put forward my name as an application and stuff. And I'm heading out to Vancouver in 2.5 weeks' time, which now will be post. And I think one of the things that I really love is that opportunity to meet with people I've either seen over the years in a global setting or meet new people. And I love that power of connection. I think that's the thing I really missed during COVID, is to physically be connected with somebody electrically in the same room.
Right.
And so I'm so looking forward to heading out and connecting with people in the same room and feel that energy and that connection. And that power of connection lives over years and years later. So post-COVID, I love the fact that I can go now and connect with those people that I've only seen virtually. Yet when I see them in person, it's like I've known them for such a long time. I mean, Susan and I go back way back, and we'll reconnect after this session for sure.
Yeah. And now, Darren, you're in a totally different space, because if you're connecting locally with folks, do you contribute the connections that you're making with people in the business community to your presence in the community when you go to events, or is it social media, or are you being introduced by folks?
I'm a bit antiquated when it comes to social media and marketing, because I've relied on sort of
referrals,
the portfolio and the reputation and stuff over the years. And I've been kicked in the backside a few times over the last little while of, hey, you've got to get out there and utilize social media if you want to start grabbing those niche markets that I yearn for. Now that we're sort of downsized, I have to start really focusing a little bit more on that. And oddly enough, I actually had a meeting yesterday with someone who's going to start taking my image and putting it out there into a little bit more of a market. The way that we socialized and the way that I got work prior to COVID was, there's all sorts of different medias that you can use and groups that you can join and get yourself out there. It's very different now. And especially if your mentality is to be a smaller, more focused type design firm like we're becoming, I'm about building these one-on-one relationships. So going out and meeting a contractor that I've got a relationship with and tightening that relationship to understand that the quality of work, the relationship we want is we're all on the same page,
right?
And then we feed off each other. So it becomes even more of a microcosm in this regards.
And what about you, Alexis? Because, you're an international speaker, and you mentioned that you have had an opportunity to travel internationally to meet folks. So in building these community relationships, are the local folks seeking you out because they see what you're doing in other cities?
I think it's a combination of a lot of different things that everybody's already said. I mean, whether it's the referrals, because people who, know us, like us, trust us, refer us, that whole type of thing. No, but I love what Darren just said, because no matter what you're doing, you can't just make the connection and then see where it goes. You have to foster it. You have to, plant the seeds, and you have to keep it up, whether it's local or whether it's international. And I always use the example of the two of us, Trish, of how we met virtually and not only built some symbiotic things that we were able to do together, but also have taken that into a friendship. But everything needs to be nurtured.
Yeah. For sure.
Whether
Now, Hilda, you mentioned that you've known Susan for oodles or eons and eons. I had no idea that the two of you had a connection. So maybe you can let us know how many years you've known each other.
Oh, like what, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, she reached out to me because she was thinking of hiring somebody. And I was thinking of writing a book one day. So like we kind of understood each other that we were going to connect. And then COVID came
Right.
and then, you know, when I hear her name, I know her. And then it's a connection. So it's, again, we have to reconnect, because when we had that connection, it was a really good one. And I think what I'm finding post COVID now is I'm clear on who I want to collaborate. I want to collaborate with people whose philosophies and beliefs are similar to mine, because then we're all kind of nurturing the same mission, values, and going forward. And it makes life more enjoyable and fun.
And push each other along, right? So, you know, you can make the connections. Now, you know, you've mentioned collaboration, and of course, the Share Your Stories platform is all about that. Susan, what would say is your most rewarding collaboration? Because you're on an international stage, your forum is international. You've been very kind and introduced me to some of the folks that are in countries where we probably never would have been able to share their stories. So what would say would be your most rewarding collaboration to this point?
I would say it's the 4-day summit that I run, because I have 24 speakers coming from all over the world. They're people who have an expertise in some aspect of book writing, book publishing, book marketing, and so on. So I'm meeting other leaders who are speakers, who are experts at what they do, and they're all involved in interesting projects and so on. But also, you know, I'm very, I love that Hilda was saying about being intentional. I'm very intentional about who I connect with, because I'm looking for people who are aligned with me and my values and my way of being in the world and so on. So it's an opportunity to bring that out to the world in a unified way. You know, we're all on the same page and we all have the same desire to make the world a better place and so on. And it's just so fulfilling and fun. And, you know, there's a real sense of making a difference in people's lives with that. So I really like that. And I'm doing my first live event this summer too. So
there you go.
Going live again.
Now, Alexis, I know that you've done a few live events this year. So in terms of collaboration and where you see those things moving forward in the future, are you, like Hilda, you know, submitting your name and doing proposals to become known?
Yeah, so when it comes to speaking, absolutely. I mean, yes, you can get referred, and you know, you're lucky if you do, or they might find you online. But for the most part, it is either really going out there and finding those different groups and those different organizations where I love what you both said about, you know, making sure it's all in alignment with our values and where we want to contribute and we think that we can contribute, because that's always my mindset. Can I contribute to this group? Can I contribute to this collaboration? Can I contribute to this audience? And so, but I'm like Hilda. I've been actually out there for the most part, putting my name out there and raising my hand and say, hey, come find me.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it, because I think that, you know, in the past, we were inundated with opportunities, and now the opportunities have to be in alignment with our core values, I think. So that's a really important point. Now, Darren, I'm going to ask you a question, and that is, how do you find, you know, we always used to say it was the hustle, right? It was that we had to do the hustle to get out there and meet people. It was part of the sprinkle the infield kind of mentality, or some folks might even say, like, throw the spaghetti on the wall, and, you know, eventually you're going to connect and it'll stick, right? It'll stick with someone. But I would venture to guess that it's a little bit different now. I think our mindset is moved away from the hustle. Now, being the only male in the group, are you still feeling the need to get out there and do the hustle, or is it something a little softer? Is the approach different?
I think if I go back several years to when my ambitions of wanting a really large firm and having a full, you know, an interior design department, an engineering department, a full architectural department, and I wanted to take over the entire province and do everything. And
you were going to conquer the world.
Big aspirations, you know, and when I was younger and probably a little bit more, you know, 100-hour weeks were more manageable, you go out and you go to all these networking groups, and you do all the social media, and you jump into every group that you can, and you get out there into the community, whether it's local or province-wide. With where I'm at now, I tend to collaborate with the team that I've built and developed over the years. These, contractors that we have a really wonderful, you mentioned symbiotic relationship. We have the same goals and values. And actually a very fascinating thing that's happened over the last couple of years is, which I've been very, very blessed and happy about, is that two of my mentors from back when I was as young as a teenager, being, desiring to get into architecture, was to reconnect with John Williams and one of the very first people I worked with, Gren Weiss, from almost 25 years ago. And now we have this, there's still my mentor. I still look up to him, but there's this wonderful collaboration and relationship now, teacher student, but we're a little bit older now. And so in that regards, that's a beautiful, beautiful collaboration in my mind, because that just takes it to the nth degree of a beautiful relationship we've developed over decades.
That brings us to a really interesting point, because when we become community leaders, we're also role models and mentors, right? I mean, Darren, you're a role model and a mentor for the next generation coming up behind you. And, very nice that you've been able to mention, the people that came before you. But in terms of being a mentor and a role model, is anyone in the group actively mentoring or actively seeking out opportunities where folks, yes?
Yeah.
Becomes part of the marketing strategy, right? And part of the give back to the community, which makes it even more symbiotic, I think. Does anyone want to share a particular experience? I mean, Darren gave us a wonderful example. Does anyone else want to chime in? Hilda?
It's very interesting. I belong to my HR professional organization, and I put my name out there to be a mentor every year. And this particular one year, I ended up with a student, and then she graduated, and then she ended up working with me because the timing was right. We maintained our relationship. The timing was right, but then COVID came. She moved to Montreal, and she was working for me still through COVID, but then she got engaged and went on. And now she's had 2 jobs now. She's on her second job in Montreal, and we reconnected, and she wants me to continue to mentor her. So we are continuing once a month, meeting and chatting. She came to Toronto not too long ago. So we had this big hug fest and a conversation. So, I mean, that's the kind of joy. And I've always been about mentoring. When my husband and I had our engineering company, I created a mentoring program where every employee had a mentor and a mentee. And I personally was mentoring 14 of our staff. So that's the joy. I love to continue mentoring and supporting people.
Well, I want to thank each of you, because on the Share Your Stories platform, we do have a mentoring opportunity, informal mentorship, of course, when people can reach out and have coffees with you. So I certainly hope that those folks in our viewing and listening audience who are hearing our panel discussion today may reach out, if they haven't already, to make a connection and have a coffee with you. Now, I know we're all small business owners, and you know what? At the end of the day, a business plan, a strategic plan, a marketing plan, they all come into the picture. But marketing budgets and time, I'm sure, are a consideration that impacts our decision when the community reaches out to ask for your support, because there's no shortage of folks who are asking us to provide, products, services, donations to the community to help with other, events and causes. So what would be one of the things that you consider to be a deciding factor when you're making those decisions to join either local or global communities with your donations and sponsorship? Susan, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, it goes back to values for me again, Trish. Are we aligned? I am very clear on what's important to me. I know what my highest values are. And if I can see that reflected in the organization that's reaching out to me, then it can't always be a yes, and it depends on the size of the ask and all the rest of it. But for example, Share Your Stories. I am absolutely delighted to be a sponsor for Share Your Stories. I feel we are very aligned. But there are organizations that I've said no to because there isn't that alignment, and dollars and time are resources that are limited. Now, I do have a lot of services or products that I can give away when it's, that are relatively easy for me to do that, and I'm happy to do that. But it really does come down to those values. I'm here for a specific reason on this planet. And the more that I can lean into what that is, and the more I can contribute in that area, the more successful we can all be.
Right. And Darren, how does that impact? Because it's a little bit difficult for you to give away services like architecture, because those are a big ask. So, and it's very difficult, I'm sure, to provide donations to everybody who may be asking. So is there a criteria that you use?
Always value, as you mentioned. I kind of take a little bit of a smaller approach to it and look at how I can help the younger generations coming up who are interested in the field that I'm in. And so I find programs that can help them in art, whether it's architecture or some kind of art field. So I look to the local art gallery and help sponsor them in kids programs that, for materials and stuff like this. I reach out to the local high schools to talk to their human resources and their counselors to say, how can I help you out with students? And I get calls usually right as universities are starting to well up, and people I get all these phone calls from people and young kids saying, can I sit down with you and chat with you for a little bit? So it's not always has to be financial. It sometimes and more times can be more valuable, given just the energy that I can relate to them, to give them the motivation and the passion to push through.
Alexis?
Yeah, I'm absolutely in alignment also with both of what Darren and Susan just said. I believe the most important thing we can give is our time. That's really the most expensive thing as an entrepreneur, because we need to work in the business and on the business. And so if we're giving away our time, that's really taking away something besides, whether we give away a paper or an assessment, whatever it might be, or, something like that. So I'm always looking for whether it's an alignment. I'm looking for who the audience is, because if it's an audience that I feel I can impact, then I'm absolutely willing to consider it. And I want to get something out of it too. I want to have fun or get joy out of it. For instance, there's a global organization that for the first time, they do a global conference, and they have coaching sessions that people can sign up for. And, as the coach, what I got was admission to the conference, and that's it.
Right.
But I had so much fun, and it was so important to me to be able to help. And it was for women. It's a conference for women, to be able to help women who were struggling with something in their career, whether it was a transition or something else. I got a lot of satisfaction out of it. So I was very willing to give my 2 days of time for that. And it was local, so that made it easier.
A little easier, yeah. Hilda?
My passion is about connecting people and giving them confidence, indirectly or directly. So it's almost too broad a thing, but it does have to bring joy. And recently I was invited by the Laurier University to speak on diversity and equity and inclusivity for Blacks and Asians. And the joy that I had of sharing my experiences, my thoughts, it was so touching, because afterwards the networking was there, and the students were it was so beautiful to hear them want information to validate their journeys from a different perspective. So to me, it's got to bring, as Alexis said, joy. And it has to be something that I can give somebody, maybe that little nudge that gives them the confidence to have more confidence as they go down their journey, whatever age. And so particularly with students, it was so fun to do that again, because when we had our engineering business, we were involved with the students and bringing them in as during co-op sessions. So I thought, must make myself more available with that.
Now, if you were to ask your community, so we all know that the community asks you in one way or shape or form to connect. So if you had the opportunity to extend an ask into your own community, whether it be global or local, what would be your ask? So what are some of the things that you feel would benefit you as a small business owner in your community? Alexis, what would be the thing that you would ask?
I am never shy about telling and asking for referrals to speaking opportunities. I mean, I put that out there in every
Kudos to
one-on-one.
you.
I put that out there in every one-on-one I have with somebody, because at the end of every one-on-one, my question is always, what can I do for you right now, if anything?
Right.
And when that question comes back to me, it's the same thing. So I'm always putting that out there, and I've become very unabashedly not shy about it. So
Well, good for you, because I mean, one of the workshops that we share in the Share Your Stories is about, the art of standing out without bragging. So
exactly.
good for you. I'm glad to see that you practice what you preach. Darren, what would be your ask? What would be the thing that you would ask your community that would help you in your business journey?
That's a really tough one. And it's interesting because it's not so much an ask as it is a partnership. I look to the local municipality and that I work with, because I'm very involved with permits and dealing with the cities and stuff like this, that I want to help mainstream and work with them. So my ask out to them is, as much as you demand of me these permits and fees and processes and stuff like this, work with me to help make the process better as a professional within there. So my ask is work as a team with me and
be collaborative, right?
Right.
Yeah, be collaborative. And Susan, what about you? What would be your ask?
Oh, I'm with Alexis on the speaking engagements. Yep, I'm always looking for those too. I love to speak. It's a great way to build a business as well.
Yeah,
and and referrals. Who do you know who you think I might be able to help?
And all of these things add to our credibility, right? As small business owners, the longer you've been in business, clearly when the years start to, add up, we must be doing something right, or we still wouldn't be in business, right? So, I mean, it all sort of contributes one to the other. Hilda?
I'm with the other ladies. It's speaking, and it's really speaking to help others, as I kind of mentioned earlier. It's really that opportunity to touch people, to make them more confident in themselves, and to really spread my rev up concept of really making people feel their most confident selves.
Right. Now, so I'm going to ask the question that we're discussing all the way around with the various different components. Would you say your relationship then with the community is symbiotic at this particular stage in your career? Do you feel that it is symbiotic? Hilda?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's a two-way relationship about connection, and it's a give and a receive. So definitely symbiotic.
Darren, would you say yours is symbiotic?
As I mentioned earlier in some of the comments, in a microcosm, yeah, very much so. I'm actually giving a presentation on Thursday morning to the city mayor and councillors on how to potentially do processes better, and they've reached out to me for my input on stuff as part of a reorganization of the whole planning process. So I think after years of poking them to say,
poking the bear in the eye with a stick, as they say, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think the relationship is slowly starting to become gelled together. So it's quite nice.
Oh, good. Susan?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And it's so interesting. For so many years, I was the lone wolf. I thought, I have to do it all myself. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it by myself. And now maybe it's maturity, maybe I'm getting there, is realizing, why would I want to do everything by myself?
Right. Yeah, right.
Let's do it as a team.
Yeah, let's collaborate, right?
Yeah.
Alexis?
Oh, definitely. And I think, to Susan's point and to what we talked about earlier, as we get to know ourselves better and have gotten to know myself better and what's important to me and who I want to be connected with,
right,
and who I want to help them grow as much as they can help me grow, that turns into making it symbiotic, because you really quickly start to realize who either you don't want to engage with, or who no longer fits with where you are and who you are.
And, we're all from different cities. And I think, in a closing remark, I would have to say that small businesses that are thriving do contribute to thriving communities, right? Like, would you agree with me that, we choose the places to live, work, and play because they have some sort of caveat to us, whether it's lifestyle choices or business opportunities. But I think that we've chosen the communities because they are thriving. And the contribution that we make then is not only symbiotic, but without those thriving small businesses, you can't have a thriving community. Does anyone have any comments they want to share on that?
Totally agree, Trish. That makes such a difference. I've actually had the opportunity to go to a few communities this year in Ontario that were not thriving. And you can feel the vibes. The business community wasn't doing well, and it just wasn't a happy place. Right. So I didn't want to move there, obviously, not that I'm planning to move, but really it does make a huge difference.
Right. Anyone else want to have any comment on the thriving community? Darren?
I find, being born and raised in Burlington, there's obviously a very deep connection there. But if you look at the way that communities, even large cities in which they have small little pockets within them, the small business is what keeps the growth and the relationship and the personality going. If you start to destroy that and the small businesses go away or the entrepreneurs go away and they're replaced with big box stores or malls and stuff like this, the personality is gone and the relationship is gone and it becomes a very impersonal world. So when we start looking at entrepreneurs like us and everyone else on the screen, there's this relationship that you want to maintain, and you can do it globally or you can do it very intimately as well. Right. But it's got to be that relationship.
Yeah, that's so true. Now, as we wrap up Hilda, did you want to add something?
As I begin to start connecting in person with people post-COVID, I find the energy and the excitement and feeding into each other. And sometimes I get off the phone after discussing with a colleague and we're either getting into a collaboration relationship or we're into it. The energy, that positive feeling, and just puts a smile on my cheek the rest of the day kind of thing. So there's so much to be said for communities thriving and supporting each other and just building on that.
Right, absolutely.
Well, and I think locally, we tend to find our entrepreneurial communities too. So we help those smaller microcosms, as you talked about, Darren, there's different neighborhoods, but there's also microcosms of business. And, when I look at some of the groups I belong to, that a lot of them are entrepreneurs, or at least work in small organizations, and we help each other thrive. So yeah, being symbiotic is absolutely what it's all about.
Now, to wrap up our discussion, I'd like to ask you to share one word that describes your connection within your own community. So we started with introductions with Susan. So Susan, what would be your word?
Priceless.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a really good one. Alexis?
Energizing.
Hilda?
She took the words right out of my mouth.
You can use
energizing.
Well, we'll give you a break and we'll put energizing squared. How's that? That's collaboration.
E2.
And Darren?
Well, no, I don't know what to say now. I got.
Well, you've got priceless and energizing squared.
So. I've always been about team. So team and relationship, it's just always the way I've been in every facet. So that would be my, although energizing and everything else I love too. So.
Well, we're definitely a collaborative group, right? Listen, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for sharing not only your point of view, but your personal experience, because I think that it's really important that we make a connection with the folks in which we meet, that there is a symbiotic relationship between business and our communities. And there's also a wonderful way that we can collaborate without competition and help each other. So thanks to each of you for sharing your point of views with our viewing and listening audience. We
Thank
certainly appreciate your contributions as business owners, right? I mean, without you and the contributions that you make in your individual communities, I would think that they too are looking for your contributions to be successful and thriving. So we certainly appreciate all that you bring to the table.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
And I
you.
certainly know, ladies and gentlemen, that you lead by example. So I really want to personally thank you for the examples as role models that you set in your communities and the impact that you leave on the people that you meet. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
Thank you,
us.
Trish.
I'm Trish Tonai, founder and host for the series. And if you're interested in sharing your business story, visit our website at shareyourstories.online. And if you'd like to connect with one of our panel guests, you'll find their story and contact information in the description portion below. In the meantime, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel or your favorite podcast. I'd like to thank you for joining us, and we look forward to meeting you next time with another episode of Keepin' It Real.